Hello, everyone. In this installation of Sakshi Speaks, we're joined by queer, trans, Yamoka, Two-Spirit, Black, Boricua, Taino activist and mother, Ignacio Hutia Xeiti Rivera, who prefers a gender-neutral pronoun, they. Ignacio is a cultural sociologist with expertise in sexual trauma and healing for marginalized populations. They are an internationally known gender nonconforming speaker, educator, writer, and performer with over 20 years of experience on multiple fronts, including economic justice, anti-racist and anti-violence work, as well as mujerista, LGBTQI, and sex-positive movements. Ignacio is also the host of Connecting the Dots, a talk show that paints a holistic picture of how child sexual abuse shows up in everyday life and every level of society. They're also the founder and executive director of the Heal Project, where they are on a mission to prevent and end child sexual abuse through healing the wounds of sexual oppression and embracing sexual liberation. Ignacio graces our platform today to join us in a conversation about sex, sexuality, gender fluidity, and why comprehensive sexual education is salient in the fight against child sexual abuse. So welcome, Ignacio. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So kind of just to get started, I want to do a little bit of an icebreaker, if that's okay with you. Okay. So I want you to describe yourself in 3 words and give a little context as to your word choices.
In 3 words?
Yeah, take your time. Take your time. This is hard.
Okay. I'd say they probably all sound the same. I was going to say dedicated, loyal.
You're good.
Dedicated, loyal, and service-oriented.
Okay. Why those words?
Because no matter what work I do, I think it's held together by the relationships that I make with other people, individuals, the relationship I have to Mother Earth. So it's just like my loyalty to that commitment.
Yeah.
And service-oriented, meaning that we all have many things that we're struggling ourselves, and we're always on a path to healing or being better. And there's something very healing and beautiful about helping others, especially when you are very low, if we have the capacity to do that, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Helping others sometimes is a very healing thing, and it's cyclical, you know. So it's part of the care practice, love practice, relationship building, stuff that is really important to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So speaking of heal, so why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your initiative, the Heal Project, and what made you start it?
Okay, so the idea of the Heal Project came about probably 17 years ago or so, maybe. I was going through my own personal healing process of child sexual abuse and other kinds of forms of oppression, and I was at a point in my life where I had gone to therapy for a little while, and I wanted to express that emotion, that rage, all of that. I wanted to express it in a different way. So I decided that I was going to turn a poem that I had written into a performance piece. And so that performance piece kind of evolved through 4 years, and it was community inspired. It was a show really about my experience with child sexual abuse, but also having to raise a daughter, being a woman identified person at the time, and a lesbian. So kind of talking about the kind of women in my life, the connection with raising a daughter in this kind of society, and how CSA or child sexual abuse really complicates a lot of things in our lives. So doing that show was like a huge therapy session for me for 4 years, but it also opened up a lot of dialogue with a lot of community members. People who had never disclosed about their abuse were telling me. So after each performance, I would put out about 4 or 5 notebooks into the audience, and people would write to me. They'd write about the performance, ask me questions, tell me how I could improve the performance. So through those reactions, I kept building the performance. And so through that, people told me that they were survivors. People told me that they too were survivors of female on female sexual abuse, something that people were not really talking about 17, 20 years ago. And so through that performance, I decided I wanted to start a project, the HEAL Project, which stands for Hidden Encounters, Altered Lives. And I wanted to get the stories of females who had been sexually assaulted or, CSA by other females at the time, And I got a lot of people telling me personally, but they were not ready to tell their story. And when I wanted to do the work a little deeper, people were just not talking about sexual violence, at the rate that we're talking about it now. And so it was just really hush hush, and I had a lot of great conversations. I met a lot of great people. It was really great therapy, but it kind of stalled there. Then you jump, a decade more later, for the first time, there's an organization that got together, a network of people, and started a Just Beginnings Collaborative, which was funding people working specifically on ending child sexual abuse. So I was one of 8 activists of color who are survivors that were wanting to start their own project. And through that, I got funded for the first time for work that I had been doing forever. I've always integrated this work. And so I got funded. And so with that funding, I began the actual, funded HEAL projects. And it morphed, right, throughout this time. It's not specific to female sexual abuse, but really it's about a cultural shift that we are trying to be a part of, changing how we talk about, how we prevent, and how we heal from child sexual abuse.
No, that is definitely amazing. I know I was watching you and your daughter's YouTube channel, the Pure Love Talks, and it was really insightful and honestly eye-opening to me. Again, given with my family and discussions of sex and sexuality being kind of taboo. I think something really salient that your daughter talked about in one of your episodes was this idea of trying to separate children from sex, in the sense this idea of teaching through fear. So could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, unfortunately, we do live in a society that teaches through fear and through power dynamics. It's something that we talk about a lot in terms of when we are trying to tackle this, epidemic of child sexual abuse all over the world. We need to really think about all of the ways in which it just permeates. And so I'm sorry, can you come back to the question? I lost my train of thought.
Oh no, you're good. I just wanted you to explain this this notion of teaching through fear and kind of what your opinions are.
Yes. Thank you. So right now, I think when we think about sex in this country, maybe even in the world, who knows, but when we think about sex has been very much reduced to a very limited idea for our society. So it is limited to something that happens when you are an adult, you fall in love, and it is for the purposes of possibly producing children or to just manifest, to lock in that love, right? This is how we express love, through making love with someone else. Usually that's a heterosexual partner. And so we have these very limited ideas that many people don't fall into. But even with those limited ideas, we actually never get proper information on how to even successfully hold relationships. And I'm not even talking about sexual relationships. I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about any kind of relationship. We actually don't really have those tools, and it's not really integrated into parenting. It really is protection. Protect that child. So protection means don't do that. Don't allow somebody to do this. If you have a question, don't be afraid to ask me. It's kind of almost barking orders at a child without giving any kind of explanation or teaching tools, so that they're taking something from that, right? Because when you're gone from that equation, what does that child have? Nothing.
Exactly.
So you have to give tools to build upon, right? Age appropriately and talking. And so when we think sex, it's we jump right to penis and vagina. We jump right to lust. We jump to you know, that a female would be considered a slut, that a boy could get somebody pregnant, right? So we think about all the bad things, and I think that when we concentrate on those things, we make it actually worse, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't go there, don't do that, don't, no, 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 no. And it's like, why? You know, and it's like, as you're growing up, you're like, why? I have all these feelings in my body. Like, what's going on? Why is that a secret? So it's a constant struggle, right, for this idea of protection. And I think that we need to really broaden the idea of protection, or redefine that, and then also broaden the idea of human sexuality or sex, that this thing that we're so afraid of.
Yeah.
And so at the Heal Project, we talk about this as that sex education has to become a life skill that we actually teach to our children. And this is not to say this is how you have sex, right? This is how you lay down with somebody, have sex. No. When we break down humanity, like, to its basic form, it's like, as humans, we have many things in common, and that is, we want to survive, and we want to find connection, right? And we want to find meaning, right? We want to find meaning in our lives. We're constantly asking, why am I here? What is the meaning of life? What do I have to accomplish, right? And how do I survive? How do I do this? And I'd like a mate, a friend, someone, right? So we all look for that. What are the tools in order to actually attain those things, right? The very same tools that it takes to hold a relationship, respect someone, love someone, be in a relationship, are the very same tools to managing life. And you know, like, how we actually understand ourselves and how we communicate, how we take rejection, how we make an apology, how we have empathy. Like, all of those skills are actually a part of our human sexuality, because it really is about a process of understanding ourselves, who we are in our family, in the context of society, and how I relate to others. And then that power dynamic, right? And so if we start talking about that, really talking about that, and even talking about the beauty of sex, the beauty of connection, that sex could be mind-blowing and wonderful, and under the wrong conditions, it can be really horrible, right? Like, the absolute truth about bodies and bodily autonomy. Because what we do is we totally almost subtract a huge portion of what we have to do in our lives, what we have to learn in our lives. And what ends up happening is that most people, if they have the privilege to go away to college, this is one of the first times that they'll be experiencing sex. This is why unfortunately, a lot of people going into college experience sexual assault, rape, sexual violence, right? Because they're in situations they have never, ever experienced. They've never had to navigate maybe people coming on to them, trying to navigate dates, going to parties, experiencing their own sexuality. So all of this is about how we actually turn back the hands of time here and think about, you know, how in our families, how do we actually raise children, and how do we actually protect them? Are we yielding power over children and not giving them the proper resources and tools? Or are we actually actually doing preventative work? Because in my opinion, a lot of the current work that we have it's responsive, it's knee-jerk reaction work. The preventative work is really this cultural shift, because it is quite alarming to me that when we think about ending sexual violence of any form, when I think about rape culture, this includes talking about children who are raped as well, that we don't talk about sex. We only talk about power. And that is just a tiny portion of it. We have to talk about sex. Because when you think about the numbers of, say, young people who are considered sexual predators or something, a lot of the times it's because they had no information, have no concept, don't understand what boundaries mean, and all they ever know was stuff they watched on TV. Well, that's the way girls like it, right? That's the way guys are supposed to behave, right? And then when it comes to LGBT community, there's not enough information out there, so it's like trying to figure it all out, right? So it is this huge secret kind of thing around sex, this mystery thing that we have to demystify. We have to completely take the shame away from sex. It is a natural, normal thing to want to have or not want to have, right? It is a natural, normal thing. So when we start thinking about it in that way and stop being so afraid for children and then making these decisions that actually are not really helping in the long run, it's going to make a huge shift in our society as a whole, not just about child sexual abuse, but domestic violence, about even the process of coming out. We wouldn't even have a process of coming out of the closet if we talked about human sexuality and gender so naturally. It's like you're born, the doctor assigned this, this sex, but you have choices, right? People sometimes align with that and maybe you don't. And that's teaching all of this stuff. It's information and really holding a container of safety so that they can navigate that on their own and learn how to make decisions, learn how to notice maybe danger, learn. Because when we do it all for them, they don't learn. They expect the parents to do it, right? This is the power dynamic. We have to teach, give the information and the resources so they can go off and learn, take that and learn more and keep passing it on, right?
No, I definitely agree. Like it's so crazy to actually think about that, right? So like you have sexual abuse, you have sexual violence, but it's always, sex, as you said, just trying to have that void or, separate the two. So that's, it's very profound. So I kind of want to shift into like, so you have your own experience as a survivor of sexual violence, and, you're raising your daughter and now your grandchild as well. So what advice do you have for parents to, try to induce or try to start having these kinds of conversations with their children? As you said, like, fear, it's a difficult thing to overcome, but, what steps can parents take to kind of avoid teaching sex, things about sexuality, gender through a lens of fear?
I think that now there is a lot of more information and resources out there for folks. So, of course, following the HEAL Project, because we put out a lot of information there. There is Sex Positive Families, these organizations and groups that are popping up and saying, yeah, this is really important stuff that we need to be talking to our kids and not waiting until they're teenagers or waiting until they're going through puberty where so much confusion and body stuff is happening, not waiting until they're considering, identifying as trans, right? Like these are not the moments where we want to start these conversations. So for me, we say that talking about holistic sexuality as a life skill starts from birth to crossing over. Like from the moment that your child is born, we are teaching them age-appropriate things about stuff. It's the way we interact with them. It's the way we show them if they, how they respond to touch, how we respond to how they respond to touch, right? We show them in various ways about bodily autonomy and things, and apologizing to them and letting them know that they have voice, even over their own parents, about their bodies and negotiating and things like that. So there are a lot of different tools about teaching these things that has nothing to do with talking about sex at all, and being very open about sex and relationships and not getting so afraid. So actually, I shouldn't say that. Being afraid is actually normal. Being afraid, you can be actually terrified, shaking your boots anytime you have to talk about anything about sex with your kids. That is totally normal. And I think that one of the things that parents have to learn how to do is take that fear and process that with other parents, not with your children. Your children should not have to process that fear with you. As adults, we can process that with other parents, trying to navigate how to talk to their kids, getting support from from groups and things to talk about the best way to talk about these things. There are so many wonderful books out there around sex and sexuality and gender, and not even about transness per se. It's about just gender. Just gender and how beautifully fluid gender is. So I would say the library you have for your children is super important, and I would include in there books on different cultures, religions, racial ethnicities, all of it, because all of this is a part of our world, right? And there's so much difference, and there's so much connection as well. So it's just lovely to have conversations, sharing stories. And I also say sharing stories about your own stuff, right? It humanizes you as a parent, because sometimes kids see you as this thing. No, you can do no wrong, right? It's like, you can say, when I was a kid, this happened, or I felt like this, or when your kid says that they're happy or afraid or something, it's like, yeah, I remember feeling like that too. When that, it humanizes, it allows them to know that what they're feeling is normal, and that they can process through that normalcy without having us say, don't do that, it's okay, I got you, and we are processing those feelings for them constantly. And so how will they learn? How will they learn? So it is, I think it's an intentional, consistent process. And really and truly, all of this is so integrated into our society. I mean, we have opportunity every single day to talk about rape culture, to talk about CSA, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. There's no lack of opportunity to talk about toxic masculinity. There's no lack of opportunity to talk about, transphobia and trans Black women being murdered, and so there's no lack of that. So there's always something that you can pick out and just talk about it and ask questions depending on their age, right? What do you think about that? Have you heard about this stuff? What do you think? What do your friends think? Why do you think that? Right? Because you're not giving opinions, you're having them formulate their own. And if you don't agree with that opinion, keep pushing and asking questions. Tell me more about that. Tell me more. And then you can say, well, in my opinion. And then you can say, so what you're teaching your child is actually how to stand their ground when they have an opinion, that they could actually have a different opinion from you. And that they can learn how to argue that opinion, right? Or come to a place where say, you know what? I heard you out. You're right. I agree with you. Right? Teaching a process of being humble, of understanding, because those are the very things when you're in a relationship. What do you have to learn how to do? Right? You are navigating two personalities, and you are navigating how you communicate with one another, how you negotiate, all of that. These are the tools, right?
No, that's so very insightful, right? Because it takes a village, obviously. It's a whole community. It's not just parents, it's like friends, family members. You want to have like these continuous conversations and be comfortable, right? And there's always open to make mistakes. Like no one's perfect, right? So you're gonna be, this is gonna be a continuous process. Like you're gonna be uncomfortable, you're gonna, you'd be like, oh, I don't want to talk about this, or, there's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a process, but I think you're definitely right. Like it's important to have these conversations. It's important to continue to make yourself available, but also be able to meet your children halfway. Right? It's one thing to tell like, oh, if you have any questions, you can come to me, but it's another thing to actively try to engage, right? In the variety of situations that you mentioned, to try to engage and communicate and just act on that. I'm available. Make sure your children know that, if they need anything from you, you're going to be there.
Yeah. You have to do the, probing questions.
Exactly.
You can say that till the cows come home. You can talk to me about anything, but a situation comes up, it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
That question, how do I ask? How do I ask?
Definitely. So kind of moving forward. So I know you talked about gender and gender fluidity. So how can parents be supportive of someone known to us that, is confused about their sexuality or comes out to them or chooses to not necessarily fit into a gender binary? How can community members, how can parents be supportive of them?
Well, first and foremost, I think that that for parents, I know a lot of times they feel a sense of, loss, that they gave birth, to what they consider, a person of one, gender, and now they are feeling that they want to express in a different gender. So first and foremost, I know that for parents, it is a process for parents personally. And I would say that, again, this is a wonderful opportunity to get support for parents for this process, because it's not an easy one, right? So it's like, you get support for parents, and you can really learn what not to say, right? Because we, as parents, we're processing our own, plus the emotions of the person that we are in care of, right? And also wanting to respect and hear them out, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that in those moments, we don't have to make huge decisions, right? This is a conversation, right? We don't have to be terrified of anything or think that all these changes are going to happen. I think if a child is talking about their gender, I think it's a wonderful way to know that your child is like being intentional about themselves and their identity, which is wonderful. You know, to me, it'd be like, tell me about that. Why are you thinking that? What do you feel? You know, getting to know why that feeling is coming up and not calling it a phase at all.
Yeah,
That is
definitely.
the worst thing to do, because really and truly, if you think about it, this is it's all a process, right?
Yeah.
Whether that child decides that they're trans and who knows, maybe a year later decides not, that's, to me personally, that is not detransitioning. That is the process of gender fluidity, right?
Yes.
If we say that gender is fluid, there's no detransitioning. There's, I'm here.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of gender, that it is not fixed, that it is movable if that is in you, if it feels that is the right thing, right? So I think unlearning and relearning for parents, right? It's really hard. So I think the support, the books, of course, and listening, listening, because it's so hard for us to do that. And I include myself in there. It is so hard for us to do that when we think we know the answer. And when it's about, again, this protection, the fear. I fear that because if you're trans, something's going to happen to you. So please don't be trans. Right? That's not the answer at all.
Exactly.
That's not the answer at all. It's for that child to be held and supported, because the more they're supported and held, the more they will survive. Actually, it's actually data that actually speaks to that. The more support a child has from their family, they are more likely, as a trans or gender nonconforming child, they are more likely to not try to commit suicide, have have employment, gainful employment in the future, have great relationships, all of that. So just the simple support and listening, asking questions is so vital. It actually literally can save that child's life.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, right? Because gender it's fluid, it's beautiful, right? I think a lot of times people want to position us as human beings as static characters, like we don't change, we stay the same, but we're dynamic. We change all the time. We're changing every day. I'll be one person today and another person tomorrow. So I definitely agree. And then it's very important to have those conversations, and of course support, like being able to just be yourself wholly and truly around the people that you love is such a vital thing. So that's so important. That's so important. So I know I have another question for you. So, and this kind of relates to the pandemic, right? So, we've been locked up. I mean, we're almost free, relatively going back to normal, but we've been locked up for a year plus now. And of course, like with the idea of like child sexual abuse, sexual violence, interpartner violence, you're being forced to be at home with, somebody who might be abusing you or somebody who might be enacting violence on you. We here at Sakshi have this initiative to make home a safe space, right? Make home a safe space for children, for anybody in the household. So for you and your experience during lockdown, what are some of the ways in which you're able to make your home a safe space, in terms of just like physically, emotionally, mentally? And what do you also believe are conducive to having a safe space outside of the home? So like in community, in the workplace, what do you think?
Yeah. So, to say like, well, during COVID, yes, so many people, whether in domestic violence situations, intimate partner situations, or children that are being sexually assaulted. So hard. I mean, it was such a weight on so many people, especially a lot of us doing this work. The instant this happened, it was like, oh my God.
Exactly.
All of these kids and all of these people. And so I think a lot about, the topic, the category of people, which I don't know if I like this term, but like bystanders, like what bystanders work can be in this time, So that would be, for instance, if there's a home where there are children, or you know of some friction with a couple or something, it's like calling and making yourself available, checking in,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone had a really good suggestion once at the beginning of the pandemic, where they knew that there were children in this house and they hadn't heard them and they were really concerned, and so they started giving little like pandemic gift things to kids in the building.
Yeah.
Just, it was almost like a thing to let them know, I know the children are here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just letting you know that I know that they're here. So like acknowledging that people know that we're watchful or something, right? So I think sometimes people get really creative in how to support. Of course, also a lot of organizations. We are not a direct service organization, so other organizations have been really working on hotlines and Zoom things, but sometimes that's not even possible when you live in a home and depending on the age of the child. So it's really, really complicated and really intense, right? To think about harm reduction approaches in a pandemic, right? And in terms of me and how I make my space safe, we did at the Hill Project, we just did a little posting a while ago called Safeguard My Crib, which is like how we create safe spaces within our homes for ourselves. And so I posted a video showing all the little things that I've created in my home. So I have like this little nook under my stairs where I have a little rug and a little thing where I can sit in there. I have artwork where I can look at. I have a little castle that I have where I do my age regression and child play when I need to do that. That's my go-to when I have my stuffed animals and stuff. And I have I created my living room. I turned it into a gym in the pandemic. So I have my weights, my boxing thing. I have all that. So like just creating these spaces where I can walk around the house and punch a bag, do some stretch yoga, hide in a little cubby, like those little things for myself. And so I was encouraging people, or asking people, how do you safeguard your crib? Whether that's like a little corner where, you read by yourself, or you meditate, time for yourself, or you go outside and put your, bare feet on the earth, something like that. So that's how I kind of try to ground and keep it together while I do this work, and I'm still healing. I often say, I say I'm a CSA survivor, but sometimes I want to say I am, surviving CSA. I'm surviving CSA every day, and if people think that something that happened to you when you were a child doesn't affect you when you're an adult, I don't know what world you're living in. Because the experience I had was when I was 8, 9, 10. I'm going to be 50, and that is very much in me. It's in my body. It's in all of that, and I have to navigate those feelings, that trauma, all the time. I mean, it changes the way in which it affects me, or how deeply it does, but it's there. It's there.
Yeah, definitely. But 50, wow, like you look amazing. You look amazing. Okay, so I know you're really experienced in a lot of different fields, so multiple fields. Could you tell us a little bit about like your journey? So in terms of just like being an artist, being an activist, being all these things, like how did this journey?
I guess you could say the journey started with my healing. I was doing a lot of like rage writing. I just was writing a lot, trying to get stuff out, trying to figure things out. And so that writing turned into poetry. And so I started, doing like cafes and doing little poetry. That started feeling good, and the feedback I was getting from people. And so that started my kind of work in doing theater and my performance. But through that performance, all of my performance has been political. So it's like combining, performance and politics, and really kind of sharing my story through that, which I absolutely loved. And through that healing process, coming out as a lesbian, and then coming out later as a person who is polyamorous, also being a sex worker for some time. So all of these kinds of journeys that I've taken really, I learned a lot about myself and others. I taught myself a lot. I learned from a lot of other people and mentors, and through that, I was involved with, economic justice, environmental justice, anti-violence, LGBT, Q, um, sexual liberation.
Yes.
I did, anti-oppression, like race work, not anti-racism work for a while. So a lot of those things, which really are just, they're all
intersected.
connected.
Yep.
They're all connected. I could work on one thing and still connect that thing right back to that. It's about systems. It's about like challenging these systems and breaking them down. I mean, it really is about refocusing, unlearning and relearning. Especially at the time when we're talking about defund the police and abolish prisons. We have to really think about these skills that I'm talking about. How will we manage? How can we care, love for one another, and respect one another in a world where we have relied so heavily on police and the incarceration of Black and brown people, which also is a regurgitation of CSA tactics, right? Shame, secrecy, throw away the key, right? So if we don't believe in that, if we want to end, prison industrial complex, then that means that we actually have to think about the vastness of how we work with harm doers, right? So it's not just put them in prison for 20 years and thank goodness. Oh, and maybe they'll get raped while they're in prison so they can learn a lesson. Same shit. We are regurgitating the same shit that's happening to us. So it's like we will never get anywhere if we keep doing that. Sometimes that feels good, right? Maybe revenge, rage, sometimes that feels really good. But in the long run and the bigger scheme of things, what ends up happening is what is happening now. Black and brown people in prison for a really, really long time. People being sexually assaulted and raped on a consistent basis. Is rehabilitation happening? Absolutely not.
Exactly. Right? And of course, exactly. No, that is a very salient point because, right, all of these issues are very much intersectional. So even looking at like our prison system here in the United States, there's no such thing as rehabilitation, right? There's no prison systems originally were, a way to legally have slavery, in the sense that, you're free, but if we arrest you and put you in jail, then you no longer rights. You have rights. You're no longer a human being. So we can use you for free labor. We can mistreat you any way that we want to, right? And that's not how to heal, right? That's not how to heal on either sides. But be it perpetrator, be it victim, like that's not how to heal. So that is a very important point that you just raised.
Also, there is, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but there is a fine line, between harm doer and victim. And this is not to say that all victims become harm doers and vice versa and all that. That's not to say that. It is to say that because of lack of information and people being confused and not understanding and fear and all that stuff, there is a fine line between crossing a boundary and not when you don't know it. Right? Exactly. When you don't understand what the hell a boundary is, right?
Exactly.
When people consistently tell you, no, push harder. If they say no, just keep on at it, right? They wouldn't think that they're doing anything wrong because every freaking romance movie and song tells you to stalk someone, right? So how do you know that that's not right, right?
Yeah.
Because we as a society need to say, oh, actually, that's a romance movie. That's not real. That's taken some stuff from reality and making it into something fun. So that's not real. Same like a monster movie. You go to see a monster movie, you could leave that and know that was not real. That was scary as hell. It wasn't real, right? And that's what we have to start doing because we're integrating this fantasy. And that fantasy feeds into, sex only happens when you're in love. Right? You'll find the right person. And two people stick together no matter what. That is not a good lesson, right? Because what does that do? That's not teaching communication and how to come together and find a solution. It is saying, withstand it, hold it, because a good marriage or good relationships stays through the tough stuff, right? That's not the lesson we want to teach.
Exactly.
Teach, what feelings are you feeling? How did you convey those feelings? What is the goal of this conversation? What do you want to happen? You know, what does healing look like? Or,
Exactly.
you know, different conversations than the, you know, I'm holding it.
Exactly.
I'm holding this thing because we don't break up. It's just a different, we need to be thinking about relationships and care and love.
Yeah.
Much, much more differently outside of romance and outside of fear.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Okay, so moving on. So, as a filmmaker, writer, and performer, you have written plays and films that have social change message embedded into them. So, from your opinion, what is the power of creativity in conveying social messages, according to you?
Oh, I mean, I almost think like it's a part of our responsibility, and it's also a part of our process, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's our own public process of things, right? So this is my public process. I'm doing a show, and if you want to see it, check it out, and then we can, you know, make some comments about it. But the thing that I do love about performance is that, or using politics, but social stuff, and then like doing it in a performance, whether it's a 15-minute skit or a 1 hour show, is that arts, performance, expression like that can happen anywhere. And when you have a stage, whether someone likes what you're saying or not, they're there. And like, for instance, I did a show once where I got booed, right? And somebody asked me, "Oh my God, did you feel like horrified because they booed you?" And I was like, "No, actually, I was actually happy." And they were like, "Why?" I was like, "Because the thing that I said really jolted those people, and they booed me. And no matter what, after leaving here, they're gonna have a conversation about what I said, and that's gonna go further on, right? So whether you hate me or like me, you're going to have a conversation about the thing I said." I'm trying to invoke some conversation, some dialogue, right? And so it allows for people with different opinions, experiences, and lives to share, so that other people can either relate to that or learn something that they've never even heard of before, right? So art is it's what do you say? It's approachable, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can go to an art show and say, "Hey, come to this art show," right? But sometimes you say, "Hey, come to this rally or this political thing."
And then it's like, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'll go to this performance, right? I'll see some cool ass performers who just happen to be performing about, you know, ending sexual violence, right? So I learned something.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really interesting perspective. Like, you know, not even being afraid to be booed. And I think that's important too, because there's that again, there's a sense of fear, like, oh, you know, am I doing the right thing? Am I offending people? But in a sense, like, if you're staying authentic and true to yourself, you know, you're making sure that you're not harming anybody with what you're saying, but you're coming from a frame of education, just honesty, or just being really open. So I think that's really important to note as well. All right, so here at the Rakshin, so we have this project out of Sakshi. It's called the Rakshin Project, which is it's aimed towards preventing child sexual abuse, right? By educating youth, by empowering them and giving them the ability to identify, call out, and also advocate against any form of child sexual abuse specifically, but any kind of anti-violence, right? So according to you, what are some ways in which we can prevent child sexual abuse, and what are the first steps we can take in educating children?
Well, in preventing it, it's about talking about it.
Yeah.
We often talk about, you know, preventing child sexual abuse with children without actually talking about anything. So
exactly.
There has to be something, you know, like, it can't be like, "Don't let anyone touch you." That's not a conversation. That's confusing. That's a lot of kids. That happened to me. I was like, why? You know, my mom would tell me, like, you have to do this. Like, if you wear a dress, you have to wear shorts.
Exactly.
You know, never sit on a man's lap. Like, I heard all the rules. I had the rules down, but I was like, why? What is that? Why do I have to stay away? Like, do I do the same with my dad? Can I sit on my dad's lap? You know, it was like, so many questions. And so again, this is under the guise of, just listen to me because I got you. I'm protecting you. You don't need to know anything else.
Exactly.
Right?
Right. Yeah. True.
Yeah. So I would say the the just talking openly about it, and talking openly about it can be as simple as, you know, this is your body, you know, and you have a right to your body. So, and you show that to your kid. So if your kid wants to hug you or touch you and maybe you're not in the mood, you can say like, I'd like it if you ask me, right? Or this, we're just modeling, pretty much. It's all about modeling, 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 and finding media and books and things that also model the same message, right? So that modeling could you know, out model all the, you know, the fantasy shit out there, right? So it's like being consistent with just being okay with talking about stuff, naming body parts for what they are, right? It's okay to have a cute little name for it, but they also have to know the other name. You know, they also have to know the other name. And really, I think I keep reiterating very much, it's about bodily autonomy, bodily autonomy, bodily autonomy. How do you teach bodily autonomy? And that's also as simple as when your kid is sitting at the table eating dinner, right? Let's say you got some peas that the kid is not wanting to eat, and you say you need to eat your peas, and they're like, I don't want it. And they're like, you're not getting up out of the table until you eat your peas. So here's a good example of what's the goal here, right? What's the goal here? And is this a good opportunity for teaching maybe this child to negotiate, right? Or asking why they don't want it, right? Because that is bodily autonomy. That is, I do not want to consume this thing, and the person is like, you will consume this, and you're gonna stay there for an hour until you consume it, and then it's like, but why? So it becomes a power struggle rather than the actual thing. So then for me it's like, why don't you want to eat it, right? It's like, I don't like it, I'm full or something, and then I could say, so do you think you could take 2 or 3 bites maybe, and then I could put the rest away, you know? And they could either agree to that or say, I don't really want it, and I'm like, okay, maybe we could check in an hour and see if you want it then, or I could add it to the next meal, whatever, right? So even if we don't find the right agreement, I'm really there just simply teaching when there are many, many ways to look at a solution, right? Like we can think about this, right? It can be, and you're again teaching communication style, teaching. Well, actually, no, I don't want this. Like you have to teach the no, and have somebody accept the no, right? Because how do you teach your kid the thing when you don't allow them to express the thing?
Yeah, exactly.
And so those little moments are the best. Like I also think about my daughter when she was little. We used to fight every day about her freaking clothes. She wanted to wear, you know, summer dresses in the winter and like wool clothing in the summer. And so we were always fighting when she was like 4 years old about clothing. So what do? Instead of me every morning fighting with her saying, you will wear this, you know, this is what you wear, it's summertime. But I said, I get up in the morning and I picked 3 outfits that I like. And I put them out and I was like, today you get to choose what you want to wear. Which outfit would you like to wear? And then so excited looking at the 3 outfits, and it's like, I'll choose that one. Beautiful choice. This is what you chose. Really, I chose the 3, but within that context, you know, the acceptable outfits, she got to choose, and then we both were happy. She was happy with that she got to choose, and she felt like a big girl, and that she chose the thing. And then I was happy because she didn't pick a ridiculous outfit. But it's learning about choices and stuff, you know. And really navigating that.
No, definitely. I think that's a really good example. Something else that I really enjoy that you and your daughter do also is like, you know, in terms of just like popular culture. So watching movies, watching those, you know, romance movies that like to idealize everything. And really just like, I think you both mentioned these in your the Pure Love talks that you do, where it's like you're dissecting these, you know, these movies, these films, or even scenarios where you might not even really think about that this has anything to do with like bodily autonomy, has anything to do with sex and sexuality, but you find a way to kind of introduce those conversations. I think that's also really cool as well.
Yeah. I think the thing is, never make it about this. Like, I'm going to show, if you ever do this, just don't do this. Let's talk about sex. Don't do that. You can talk about sex without saying, let's talk about sex.
Yes,
and
definitely.
For me, it's like conversation. It really is about just trying to throw some stuff out there. And I know it's hard because I remember when my daughter was a teenager, I wanted to talk to her about sex like crazy, and she was like, block, block, I'm not talking to you about sex. No, no. And I was like, please, can we talk about sex? And so I had to think about new ways of introducing this conversation without saying to her, are you having sex? Do you need protection? You know, and so it is about being crafty. It is. It's about being, you know, just having some tools in your bag about how do I bring this up. So the movie stuff is perfect because I'd be like, oh my God, I just saw this good movie the other day, and this is what happened. And so we just talk about it as a conversation, and then make parallels to real life. Do you think that was real? And always come to some really, really good conversation. And I mean, you can watch any movie and you can bring it to bodily autonomy, relationships, about all that stuff.
And that's really cool. All right, so our last question, one's going to be fun. So you have written multiple films so far. Which one would you say is your personal favorite and why? And take your time.
Maybe my little short called They. And it was like, I did that so long ago in the beginning of my transition, when I was starting to use they as a pronoun. And it just kind of shows my thought process around fluidity. And I like that one because I actually got to interview my parents, and my dad has since crossed over. So it's lovely to see them talking about how they see by gender.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ignacio, for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation. For our audience, please check out the Heal to End Instagram page. You know, check in with Ignacio and their page. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.